Welcome to week 8 of GLIAC Weekly. I am your host, Matt Witwicky, otherwise known as Wit, out there in this weird D2 world, and joined by Tony Nicolette, the guy who is our GLIAC expert. Tony, we're past the halfway point, and also it's time for the big game. So, are you ready? Do you have your are your ankles taped up? Are you ready to go here?
That's right, man. Week Ocho. I am all set and raring to get after it.
Awesome. Well, certainly we have a pretty big football game that we're going to be breaking down a little bit later on in the show. But before we get there, we're going to break down a little bit of the action that occurred this last week in the GLIAC, along with, previewing what we have upcoming. Tony, let's go ahead and we'll pop this onto our screen here. Some of the finals that we had. We'll break these games on down, but we had Ferris reaching the pay window again.
Yeah.
Then from there we had Davenport also getting a win. We have Saginaw Valley in their finest moment yet this year, without question, getting a win. And somebody got off the schneid.
That's right. and it was a big schneid.
So, Northern Michigan all of a sudden gets a win. For not to pat ourselves on the back at all, Tony, but we both called it.
I think we were both kind of on that wagon. Yes, we were.
Yeah. So congratulations, Northern Michigan, a team that we felt had been knocking on the door for a while, and they go ahead and get it done at Roosevelt. So let's go ahead and kind of look through things game by game. Our first contest, we have Saginaw Valley, who goes ahead and gets. It's going to have to be. We're going to have to say an upset win. They're not winning this game every other year. I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And Tony, we'll go ahead and I'm going to break down some of the video, and then we're going to come on back and talk a little bit more about it. And we'll do that with some of the other contests as well. And this one certainly feels fitting for us to go ahead and kind of start on off with. And as we get the contest going to begin with here, we go ahead and we see right from the jump, Saginaw is marching. But as you can see there, Mr. Carbone and company go ahead and get a sack. And all of a sudden, Grand Valley with the nice screen here goes for a score. I really like that play design. Very well done as they went about that. Now, as we move throughout the contest here, Grand Valley goes ahead and gets up what looks like it's going to be a fairly comfortable 14-6 lead. But this is kind of where things made a little bit of a turn in this contest. And as we're looking at it now, the block kick ends up going back for points. And this is where things got a little wonky for Grand Valley. And speaking of wonky, the officials kind of struggled a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about this, trying to figure out the placement of the football right before half on a Grand Valley attempt. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Kudos, for Saginaw. Saginaw goes ahead and booms a field goal here right as we're entering halftime. Tegan Lendering with a 49-yarder there, and the team's not exchanging Christmas cards there. So we move into the second half. Mason McKenzie accelerates upfield, does lose the football right before he gets to the goal. Tony, when I was watching the game live, I kind of felt that they had blown their opportunity right there. And then this call, Tony, we're going to call that a grounding penalty. In watching the replay, it was clearly that. I'll be honest, I don't know how the officials make that assumption when we've seen that play so many other times, and it's just an incomplete pass. And boy, I tell you, Saginaw really takes advantage of it there. They get the 2 points, and you go ahead and you see Mason McKenzie rocket forward for a score. Boy, when he gets moving, look out.
He's fast.
But you know what? Grand Valley battles right back, and you see Andrew Schuster go ahead and lay that one up perfectly for Lynn.
Rachel.
I was going to say I'm struggling with his name apparently tonight. And then they go for 2 here. A bit surprising. We'll talk about this decision in a moment. But they go ahead. They've got a play here where they're going to try and get it just inside the boundary and the score. Ball's knocked away, and Saginaw wins the contest. Tony, what were some of your takeaways in this game, having a chance to call the action like you did?
Yeah.
I think there's a whole lot to unpack here. Give me some of your early thoughts.
Yeah, and we talked about some of this in an abbreviated sense on Sunday night, but there were a couple things that throughout the bulk of the first half and even through the third quarter, there were a couple things that we noticed that were really prevalent. Both defenses came to play.
For sure.
And both defenses were extremely well prepared. For as much as Saginaw did kick a couple of field goals. In fact, they maybe even had 3 field goals. I don't remember when they got that third field goal. Oh, I think that came in the fourth quarter. They had Saginaw Valley had the better of field position throughout most of the first half. And Grand Valley bent a little bit in spots, but didn't break. You showed the sack that they had on that first possession, and Grand Valley did a great job when they in their pass rush of kind of keeping that pocket static so that Mason McKenzie couldn't get out and use his legs. And so all 4 sacks that Grand Valley registered came in the first half. By the same token, watching the game unfold, especially as Grand Valley tried to run the football, moderate success in the first half, nothing overwhelming, and basically nothing in the second half. Right. It honestly did look a lot like the game last year at Saginaw Valley, where Grand Valley just could not get anything going in the run game.
Fair point. Yeah.
And there were just a lot of schematic things where Saginaw always had people in the right spots. It just didn't matter what was called. They always had people there. And I will tell you that even though Andrew Schuster threw for 260, I think, in this game and the 3 touchdowns, there were several instances where even as he was trying to move the ball through the middle and longer downfield options in his route trees, there looked like there were Saginaw coverage there. So the preparation that Saginaw's defense had for this game really was outstanding, because there were a lot of times Grand Valley had some plays that worked great, but there were a lot of plays where they went begging and they just didn't look like they had any sort of real advantages in terms of either people in space or being able to get guys through the line in terms of the run game. I mean, it just Saginaw's D was really ready for that game.
You know what? One thing, Tony, I'm going to pause you for one moment.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed in watching the contest was how well Saginaw was contesting the thrown balls. Their corners were fighting for the ball, and you know what? There was plenty of contact, and as you guys mentioned in the game, the officials were letting that happen.
Much of it, yes,
for both sides.
Yep.
And I thought Saginaw was really contesting those passes really well, despite the fact the 260 that you mentioned. And I thought they were doing a great job of getting to the spot defensively when Grand Valley would try and get wide and things like that. Now, those were just some of my observations. Now, what are some of the other things that you have that we're going to look to kind of unpack?
I just think as the game wore on, you saw, and we did talk about this on Sunday, if you're going to wear an opposing defense down, running the ball is usually what does that. And we did see that, Mason McKenzie was over 100 yards in the game, but I would say it was like 60 or 70 of those yards all came in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was not doing anything massive prior to that. I think he got 41 on the go-ahead score.
Right.
He had 20 plus, I believe, close to 30 on the one where he fumbled inside the 5.
Yeah, a few nice chunk plays, right.
Exactly. Those weren't there earlier in the game. And so I think 2 things. One, you saw that Grand Valley, maybe wore down just that little bit, but also you got to give credit to Saginaw in terms of situationally. Both of those were instances. I know that the touchdown was a third and either medium or long, where you could tell Grand Valley thought, they're going to throw the football. And they had Saginaw was going straight McKenzie up the middle on that instance. I mean, that was a straight run call. And so, you got to give credit to Saginaw for making the right call at the right time as well. So, it was a very odd game to call. You made reference to the officiating, and so that definitely had an impact on some of the flow of the game. And again, there were times where you just kind of sat there and scratched your head at, okay, well, why is this not being handled correctly? But hey, man, look, those guys are human too, and that job's not always easy. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting game. One of the more interesting ones I've ever had the chance to do.
And let's be real frank. The play that was before half, I'd never felt like it was something that was much of a deal in regards to the outcome of the game or anything like that.
No, I would agree with that.
Saginaw was every time they had to redo the kick, they were booming it and such. But it seemed like such a schmoz of a situation that they were in. I mean, it's okay. So we're right before halftime, and the ball was going to be supposed to be placed at, what was it? The 31?
The 36 is where the play. So there was a play as the clock expired where Saginaw kicked a field goal.
Right.
And the field goal was no good. And that snap happened from the 36-yard line. And Grand Valley had 12 men on the field. Now, I don't know exactly how the rule is written when you're bringing your special teams units on and off.
Right.
There is typically, if you substitute, the defense is allowed to substitute.
Right.
Have to commit. So there was still some vagary around that. It took a whole lot of back and forth, and Coach Wooster actually challenging where they had spotted the football to get them to adjudicate the too many men on the field 5-yard penalty correctly and have the ball snapped from the 31-yard line. Now, what I would still tell you is at some point in all of that crew actually put 6 seconds back on the clock, which for the life of me, I can't figure out where that came from. I mean, the ball was snapped with 1 or 2 seconds left, and then the kick went off, and then the hit clock hit zeros. So, okay, defensive penalty, half can't end on it, an untimed down. Yeah, that would make sense. Right. Where the 6 seconds came from, that will always mystify me. So even though they probably ended up getting it right, it was still had some stuff where you're going, okay, but I know that part isn't correct, so I don't know.
Well, the fact that Coach Wooster had to call a timeout to try and get this thing right, I thought it was kind of like that. This is silly. And then they go to the booth or whatever and go and they see the play. They come on back. I mean, I'm sitting there with my watch tapping to Judge Judy, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then I'm watching the game, and I was actually getting ready to flip over to another game on Flow just because I'm busy on a Saturday flipping between games, and I'm like, and I wanted to see what happened. I'm just like, come on. They come on back and they still can't get the yardage right, and they're like, do we need to go this way 5 yards? Do we need which way did he go?
Yeah.
And it was like, what is happening here? And it was almost like they felt the pressure of the stadium, and all of a sudden they were like, and it was like, okay, this is not good. And so let's move on from that. After they finally got that schmoz taken care of.
Yeah, I think the outcome there probably was the outcome.
Right.
They should have, unless there was a substitution deal there, which I don't know enough about the rules to know one way or the other. And I could probably buy a rule book and read it up. And if I do that, I'll catch you up on it later. But all things being equal, Saginaw Valley should have gotten another crack at it, which they did, and they made the kick successfully. So it's what it is.
The kicks that he was doing were going to be good from there, or 5 yards or whatever. Now, that thing where we showed it there, where the safety that was called, my challenge with that is that ends up changing how the game is played a little bit from there on forward, because instead of it being a tie game, it's now a 2-point. It went from being a 2-point game to being a tie game. And then Grand Valley, they go ahead and do a fake punt, which they didn't need to do a fake punt. But at the same time, I understand why they did one, because they're trying to win the football game there. They're trying to make a play to win the football game and not just kind of play along.
Yeah.
And they would never have been in that situation in the first place if that 2-point thing didn't happen. And it seemed like such an obvious call that was kind of painful. So those are the kind of those two things that we're going to talk about the officiating.
Yeah.
Now, moving past all that, Tony, let's be real frank here. Saginaw Valley probably in the end probably played a better football game. And I mean, they were in a position there where they could have scored right before that point, before all that.
Absolutely.
They had a fumble and so forth.
Yep.
And, Mason McKenzie, to his credit, was making some big plays in that fourth quarter down the stretch.
Yeah.
As much or more than anybody else on that football field. And it feels like this is kind of his big moment right here after he and this club have been knocking at the door to have a big win like this.
For sure. And so to your point, they did have the fumble inside of the 5. In the third quarter, they actually threw an interception in Grand Valley's end zone as well. So they had more than one instance where they were taking the ball in and ended up getting turned over. So while you have to give credit to Grand Valley for some of that, at the same time, if you're on offense and you're moving the ball like crazy and you don't finish the drive, you still look at that as, hey, damn it, we didn't finish the drive. So to your point, yeah, Saginaw was far more consistent in terms of their offensive output, pretty much from the middle of the second quarter or so until the end of the football game. Grand Valley moved the ball relatively well in the early going and then had a great final drive. Other than that, yeah, Saginaw pretty much, at least offensively, they had the better of it of the two teams throughout the bulk of that middle of that game for sure.
Yeah. Now, Tony, we've had a fair amount of engagement in the comments area here. Like Daryl had asked, is the officiating crew going to be put on some type of review? I'll be honest, we haven't looked into all that kind of stuff. It's not that deep. It's just our kind of commentary on some of the things that we normally don't even feel the need to bring up officiating, but the fact that it became such a center point in this one, it would be hard. It would be we couldn't ignore it at the same time. Now we have some other inquiries here about, is Wooster's job at risk? I don't think so. And for some of the same reasons here, Joe mentions, what, he's done just fine against the best team in the country, and those wins mean a whole lot if I'm looking at them right there. So, Tony, when we look at this in the overall scheme of things, let's not make it look like this is a bad Saginaw Valley team. That while this is an upset, this is a Saginaw team that we expected to be, in the upper portion of the standings.
Absolutely.
And frankly, I really think, Tony, that their defense has come a long way since beginning of the year, where they were struggling to stop people.
100%. And so we talked about that going all the way back to the preview show that we did back in August, that, hey, this was going to be an uphill climb for that defense from the standpoint that they lost 9 starters off of last year's unit, that we both felt like by the end of the year, if you just look at the brand of football they were playing, that was a top 10 defense in the country. They were fantastic. And they lost several guys to graduation. A couple of them were in pro camps. They lost another handful of guys to the portal, and I know at least one of them was starting in the Big 12. So I mean, these are kids that were good football players.
No doubt.
And we've already talked about the Brandon Clayton effect. And so if you look at how that defense has progressed from week 0 to now, it took some time of getting used to for all these guys that were either transferred in, like a Christian Boyven or a Julian Chung. Some of these guys, it took a little while to figure out what Coach Clayton was asking of them. And I actually talked to Coach Brady prior to the broadcast last week just to get prepped for it. And one of the things that he was describing was how they actually, even just with the linebacking core, they moved people around to different spots between the Will, Sam, and the Mike, and figured out that they had some better fits for folks. And so they've constantly been making adjustments to things throughout the season to help things move along. And you started to see it really manifest itself in that game. Again, they looked extremely well prepared. And those two linebackers, Boyven and McDonald, Boyve and McDonald, they played great. They were all over the place, making plays like crazy, and you could tell they were super confident in what they were doing. And when you watch the first couple of games back earlier in the year, you just didn't see them playing with a lot of confidence. And so the fact that they're getting better, that's what they're supposed to be doing. So again, you got to give Saginaw credit. It took them a little longer than maybe we thought, but they're starting to play like the team that we thought they could be at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. One last thing out of the comments, and Daryl mentions here one of Worcester's wins was without TA on the other sideline. As a neutral observer, I'm going to mention something here. I thought Grand Valley was a better football team that year, period. And I think no matter if he was on the sideline or not in that game, I think Grand Valley wins that contest. And I thought that you could make a case that Grand Valley was as good as anybody in 2023. And they end up losing a super tight game at Harding. And Harding goes and blows out the competition and in the national title game. So it is what it is. But Tony, let's go ahead and we've got a fair amount to unpack on the show tonight. I think probably, Tony, so far, our most competitive or at least most interesting games that we've had all year, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we move on to Ferris and Tech, we were curious to see how Tech would be able to play in a contest like this. Could they go ahead and punch with Ferris? And before we kind of roll the video, Tony, I'm watching this game. This game was on before the Grand Valley contest, and I thought Tech was doing a fairly nice job of limiting some of the things that Ferris wanted to do in the run game. Forced them to throw in the first half, and I didn't think that Ferris was especially effective trying to throw the ball down the field. And they had some moments where their offense wasn't sharp in that first half. But guess who let them off the hook? Tech themselves by having five interceptions.
Yep.
That's why Ferris only had 21 at half, because their offense wasn't exactly taking care of business awesome. And we're going to go ahead and see some of that here. And I really felt like if Tech could have taken care of and had better, play with the ball a little safer, they could have been really in this contest. Now, we're going to go ahead and see some of the video. I'll get your thoughts afterwards, Tony. And we start on off here. They're running a little bit of the triple, and Tariq Brett gets loose. And this is a name we're mentioning more and more as the year continues. His speed is just a problem for defenses. And the cameraman even gets faked out here, doesn't know where the ball's going. And you go ahead and you see the way Brett can get open there. Now they're going to go ahead and screen him to the very top. You're going to go ahead and see here, he starts off outside and he's just running like this isn't even a thing. And he is a guy who is a handful to find in an open space like that. And he's just kind of another one of the weapons that Ferris has in this offense. You go ahead and you see him kind of cut back here as he's getting loose. And this was this is their first touchdown here in the contest. And then this was before things kind of got weird. And you're going to go ahead and see, here's the first tipped interception. And we had a few of them were tipped. A few of them were just kind of not the best decisions, if we're going to be really honest. And, you're going to see here, they're at, Tech's at 35. Ethan Champney comes around here. To say that's an ill-advised pass would be an understatement. And, our Justin Payout, one of our Elite 100 guys, goes running off with it. Guy who's got incredible alertness. If you watch him in a football game, he's able to go ahead and get around a little bit everywhere. And this is what I mean by this was maybe not the best decision. If we're going to throw it like that, we probably need to keep it and just go ahead and figure that we're going to not win that play, because it ended up being a costly turnover where they were approaching the red zone there. So we're still at a 7-3 contest here, Tony. And you're going to see, we're trying to escape the rush. Bueno is, and then we go ahead and we throw this kind of across our body a little bit. There's always a bit of a risk to a play like that. Ferris gets an interception. You're going to go ahead and see right there that Carson Gulker guy going
Yeah,
ahead.
who's he? Never heard of him.
Yeah, and you'll see Underwood in the slot gets hit by the linebacker as they go ahead and cross. And this pass here, that one was the one that really hurt, I thought. Alston Ware, who's their leading tackler, leads in pass breakups and the whole deal. He gets that one, and I kind of felt when I saw that, Tony, I thought Ferris is off to the races now. So with looking at this, what were some of your takes? I know you had a ball game to call, so you probably weren't able to watch this in the same manner I was at that time. You've got a chance to catch up with it later. What are some of your takeaways?
Yeah, so I didn't watch it live with you, but I did catch up on it later. And I mean, I think you're astute in stating that Tech actually did a pretty good job defending Ferris, at least in the first half. I mean, one play into the second quarter, this is a 7-3 ball game, and Tech's already turned it over a couple of times. And to your point, it was 21-3, but that's inclusive of a pick six. So, and again, Tech had 5 interceptions in the first half. And
hard to overcome that.
Yeah. So when you keep putting your defense in those sorts of situations, and Ferris has only manufactured 14 points on its own. One of those touchdown drives was, I think, 5 plays, 25 yards. So that speaks to what Tech was able to do defensively in that game. But boy, to ask your defense to keep being put in those sorts of situations against a Ferris for 60 minutes it is a tough bargain for which to ask. And I just, you saw Ferris kind of get themselves a little bit righted in the second half, wear Tech down a little bit, execute a little bit better themselves. And that's how they were able to stretch it out. And so this game was 38-3 until late. Tech put together a really long drive in the fourth quarter. So I mean, it had a chance to be tight early, but the other thing that I took away, in addition to Tech's defense playing well, is, I mentioned last week that when I got the chance to see Alex Bueno in person, one of the things that I noticed was I just didn't feel like the accuracy was as overwhelming as you would think, or wasn't representative of some of the numbers that he had put up in those first stretch of games. And I think that cost Tech a little bit here as well. I mean, I think he was 7-17, including the 4 picks. So, and again, a couple of them weren't his fault. We saw the tips, and we saw, one of them kind of get stripped away as they were going to the ground. So I'm not going to lay that all at his feet. But, that's going to be the maturation of a first-year starter, right? Is, okay, when you're going to get asked to perform that much in a game against one of the best defenses in the country, you gotta avoid those sorts of mistakes, and you got to find a way to execute just that pinch better if you want to have a chance to win. So, hey, he's young, he'll get there, but it was a little bit of a rough afternoon for him and for the Husky offense for a lot of Saturday.
I'll be curious to see where Tech goes from here, because they are still in the playoff race.
For sure.
And, you can't fold it up here. They've got a big game that'll be upcoming on throughout the year with Grand Valley yet. And it's one of those things where I'm just I want to see if they have the same resolve after this.
Well, so they've still got Grand Valley and Saginaw Valley on their roster or on their schedule. And they got a big rivalry game on Saturday against a team that I think is going to come in thinking they can do something. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But they three of their last 4 games are going to need they're going to need to be fully alert.
Right.
Yep.
Moving on to our next contest. This one probably didn't get quite the shine as the last 2 we spoke of, but we have Davenport putting up 49 points, which has not really been their thing this year. And it's kind of a long season right now going on in Wayne. What can you tell us, buddy?
Yeah, and so no Champ Edwards in this one. And I think we've seen, at least over the better part of the last year and a half or 2 seasons, that when Wayne moves the ball, he's usually the one, leading the offense. And he wasn't available in this game, or didn't start. Carson Crehan got the start, and I think the Warriors probably felt good about what they were going to be able to do with him at the controls, and he got nicked. I know it was in the first quarter, and I'm trying to remember back from when I was watching it. It might have even been on their first possession. He got nicked and wasn't able to return, and so you saw Justin Cox the rest of the way. And it just, now you're down to your third option at quarterback. And we've seen Justin Cox play plenty for the Warriors over the last couple of seasons. But, when he's not getting all the first team reps in practice and hasn't been your guy all season, he's kind of getting asked to do a whole hell of a lot, for 3.5 quarters of a football game. He wasn't necessarily supposed to go in and be the guy. So, they had a hard time moving the ball. Offense didn't put up a touchdown until late. For Wayne, they got a pick six at a certain point. I think it was in the third quarter. And but in this game, you actually saw DeJuan Mathis back at the controls for Davenport. And I think that facilitated them actually having the kind of balance that Sparky McEwen typically would like to have. Mathis threw for 285, which is a nice total for him. You saw Cephas Harris kind of get back at it. At the type of production that they were used to seeing from him in the earlier part of the season, with a $133 and 4 touchdowns on the ground. So this was just a real nice, even, consistent performance for Davenport, admittedly against a team that they had overmatched, but they went and handled their business on the road. And Tom Adams Field is not always the easiest place to play. And so got to give the Panthers credit for going and getting a good solid win on the road.
No doubt. That leads us into a contest that we're pretty excited to talk about here. There hasn't been a lot of shine for Northern Michigan over these last few seasons, and for us to go ahead and kind of unpack a little bit of that here. And Tony, I'll let you kind of talk about it, and then we'll go ahead and throw on some video just to kind of highlight what occurred afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we've talked about how in most instances, Northern has really been reliant on that option offense, and there's no better example of what it can do than what we saw in that box score here. I just took a snip of their rushing total because that was their offense. That was their offense. They
didn't complete a pass, so right.
Well, they only attempted one pass.
Exactly.
It was on a 3rd and 16. I think second possession that they had, and it was like latter part of the first quarter. And it was an incomplete pass, and that was the end of it. They just said, we'll just run it the rest of the way. So they did. But I mean, 538 yards of offense is awesome no matter what you're doing, but to do it all on the ground, phenomenal. And you can see there both Noah Dobert and Jahai Wood both went over 2 bills for the day. I mean, that's a heck of a lot of production. And, Austin Riddle, I think, is one of the guys that they thought they could really lean on, along with Duke Shovald as at quarterback during the year. And so they haven't had Shovald in a few weeks. They didn't have Riddle for a couple of weeks, and it made a big difference. And so to get him back, I think, you could see just how much more consistent and productive the offense was. And, Roosevelt's, defense isn't the sturdiest of tests necessarily, but nevertheless, you still got to go out and do it, especially on the road. Northern traditionally always plays much better at home. So, just congrats to Coach Richardson and the staff for just going and finally getting that monkey off their back.
Well, let's go ahead and give them a chance to get a little shine here. And, you had mentioned just a moment ago, quarterback Austin Riddle, and, he goes and starts off with a quarterback run on this one, ends up all the way on the sideline, breaks it wide, and ends up going for a score. And the cameraman was apparently, even though this is a road game, fairly excited. He was losing his mind on that. But we're going to get a chance to see the replay, and this is all courtesy of Flow Sports, where we're able to capture these from. And he runs better than I would have guessed. And so the fact that you've got 3 guys who can all take it to the house like that's a real nice option to have. And this is where we go ahead and we see Noah Dobert, like you mentioned. And I'm still a sucker for being able to see option football like this. All the light always gets shined on Harding with what they do, and frankly, it's all justified with how well they do it. But you know what? To see how well they did that in this game here with Wood and Dobert, and being a nice combination here in the way that they went about this. And they were rolling in this game. I mean, you see right here, we're at what, 27-7 at that moment. And, Roosevelt just did not know kind of which way it was going and who had the ball. I mean, you could see it right there on that replay. Now, as you kind of move throughout the contest, Roosevelt didn't give up. They kept on coming, but every time there was an answer here from Northern, you're going to go ahead and see, Dobert score there again. And, Tony, what was you had mentioned it to me in our green room before the show. Their last win was against
Lake Erie.
And that was
at the end of at the end of 2022.
There we have it. Okay,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
So if you had Lake Erie as the answer to the trivia question, you win. But Tony, I wouldn't be shocked if they got to the pay window again this year.
Well, it's entirely possible, right? I think they still have to play Wayne, who's been struggling defensively. The one thing that I like about if you watch that game, all their big plays in the run game, other than Riddles that you showed there first, those touchdowns were all coming on the dive.
I saw the same thing. Yep.
Because Jahai Wood opened the scoring with, I think, a 40-some-odd yard score. Same thing on the dive. And once he got through that first level, man, he was gliding. And so, you got to give credit to the guys up front, for getting those holes open. Riddle making the right read on whether to keep it in the belly or not. And, it feels good to be able to talk about a Northern win because we haven't been able to do it in, 2.5 years. So I'm excited for those guys.
And in their opener against Moorhead, they had some similar things happen. They just didn't finish the game off in the back half of the contest.
Well, and Northwood's a team sitting there right now. I don't know, what are they, 6-1 or 6-2 or something like that? I mean, that's a team that, as that game wore on, you're thinking to yourself, God, is Northern going to pull this off? I mean, they were in it. And I think the final on that one was only like 23-18 or something like that.
Right.
So, I mean, they've been knocking on the door a lot this year, and so it's good. It's good to see somebody for them to actually be able to open it.
Absolutely. Well, with that, that's kind of our recap of the contests. Players of the week. We've talked about a few of them, Tony, but I'll let you go ahead and handle it from here.
Yeah, we did talk about Noah Dobert quite a bit, and we got a chance to see him doing some damage there in that game with Roosevelt. And, he totaled 243 yards of the 538 that Northern put on the ground in that game at Roosevelt, and he hit the end zone a few times as well. So congratulations to him for winning the Offensive Player of the Week. We also talked about Tegan Lenderink quite a bit. He had 3 field goals in that game against Grand Valley, and 2 of them were from pretty long range too. He had a 53-yarder in the first quarter, actually at the end of their first possession, and then he got another crack at that one at the end of the half after having to hurry on and not getting a good look at it. Once he got it settled down, they moved him up 5 yards. He was able to make a 49-yarder. So those are big long kicks at the Division II level. It's for as much as we're seeing all the 60+ jobs in the pros these days. We're still not quite out to where 50s are a guarantee in the Division
No, he's
II
a weapon,
game.
though.
So
you can see that.
Yeah. So he definitely had a big impact. And then the one that we haven't really talked about yet is Giassi Madison for Ferris State, who was among the team leaders with 5 tackles in that game, but he also had 2 key interceptions. And both of those were times where, like you mentioned, it looked like maybe Northern might have a chance to start moving the football a little bit. And he stifled that and was able to keep things tight there until Ferris got on track offensively in the second half.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move to our Week 8 schedule. And Tony and I will break these down in greater detail here momentarily. We've got 2 games that are a noon start, then a 1 p.m. start and a 2 p.m. start. Michigan Tech at Northern Michigan. That should be a good contest. Roosevelt, they're going to have to show more here at Davenport in that one. Grand Valley going to Ferris State. We mentioned it on Sunday evening. I did. I think that's probably yearly the biggest Division II football game each season, not just in this conference, period, in Division II. Wayne State going to Saginaw. Saginaw is going to need to avoid a little bit of a letdown game there, but let's go ahead, Tony, and move right on into our first matchup that we're going to look at. Roosevelt at Davenport. We've talked a fair amount about Davenport a moment ago. What's your assessment right now at this point in the season with Roosevelt?
Yeah, well, Zach Zella had been doing some work for them at the quarterback position earlier in the year, and I don't know if he's been nicked up a little bit because we haven't seen as much of him over the last handful of games. And I know that Tony Chihino ended up taking the controls in that Northern game, and he did Chihino threw for 310 and 3 scores in that game. So it's not like,
Sure.
And you mentioned it when we were looking at the highlights. It's not like Roosevelt just rolled over in this game. Northern, in fact, I mean, we were kind of keeping an eye on it as in the booth as we were calling the game, and there was one point where I want to say Northern had gotten, or Roosevelt had gotten it to within 7, I think, later in the game before Northern ended up stretching it out a little bit. So I mean, regardless of who's at the controls for the Lakers, they have got to, just find a way to be more consistent offensively. But that defense has really started to let them down a little bit. I mean, there have been a lot of big numbers that they've been yielding here over the last stretch of weeks. The 42 to Northern, they gave up 55 to Saginaw. I'm trying to remember if it was a 60-something to Ferris the week before, I think 66. So, if there's anything that really we need to see from Roosevelt is that defense has got to stand up and actually get some stops so that their offense can get a chance to actually get down and get some points going for them.
Yeah, and something when I look at the graphic here, Tony, bottom left corner, total defense, almost 530 yards a contest. That is measurably different than what Davenport is over on the other side. I'm assuming we both favor Davenport in this one.
Yeah, it's hard not to, especially now that they got DeJuan Mathis back at the controls. As long as he's, he seems to be the guy that they feel like gives them the best chance to win. And so, I'm not going to say that he's had some games where you're like, boy, this guy can really play. And there's some other times where you kind of scratch your head a little bit with some of the things. But boy, he sure looked good against Wayne last week. So if he can put 2 games together here, then Davenport gets back to the good side of 500 and kind of keeps their outside chance of maybe having a say about what happens in the league alive.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and move on to our next contest. Wayne State, they are the team now that we're looking for them to get a win.
Yeah.
And they're going to be going and making a trip into Saginaw Valley. My first thought is Saginaw Valley coach is going to have to go ahead and find a way to make them play to their standard, and do their thing like they're playing a nameless, faceless opponent right now.
Yep.
Because having Grand Valley and then Wayne in consecutive weeks, 21-year-old athletes aren't going to see those 2 opponents the same way, and they're really going to need to be able to stand up here. Because we know Wayne is going to go ahead and get somebody at some point. And if you're Wayne, you just need to make sure that that's something that doesn't happen. Wayne's going to do everything they can to get off of this losing streak. So, Tony, it looks, are you down at the moment? I don't have a video for you.
Yeah, no, it's that same camera issue that we seem to be having. So
no worries.
I wasn't smart enough to go to the webcam instead of the embedded. So my mistake on that.
No worries, buddy. Well, and you can go ahead if you want to, you can go. Let me ask you in this one here. I'll actually get your winner, and if you want to drop out of the room and come on back in fresh, certainly you can.
So I think in this one it's kind of hard not to think Saginaw's the team to pick here. Similar to what we just talked about with Roosevelt. I mean 427 on offense. Yeah, is that better than 530 something? I suppose, but it's not anything that we're going to write home about. So Saginaw's just got to get out there and produce like they normally would expect to. We've seen statistically over the years that the teams that have the week after they play Ferris and Grand Valley, they're usually a little beat up. And Mason McKenzie did take some shots in that game. I would actually look for Terrence Brown to have a big game in this one, because I just think he's going to present a lot of problems at all three levels of Wayne's defense, both downfield, but also in the mid-range, getting the ball in the run in the short range. And he, had a few short passes that he took in and made some plays over the last few weeks. So I think this is a Terrence Brown game for me as I look for Cardinals to keep the momentum going.
Fair enough. I think we both still see Saginaw as the clear favorite here, but as we go ahead and we kind of move through the contests, Michigan Tech, going to go ahead and they will be playing, and Tony's going to try and rejoin the show here in a moment, guys, and reboot. But Michigan Tech at 5-2, we're playing for the Miners Cup, and we've got Northern Michigan coming off of their lone win in the last few seasons. But my initial take, guys, as we go ahead and look at this one, is Northern Michigan is, while we're going to call them an underdog, and I realize the records are much different in this one, I'm a little uneasy about how I think this one is going to go, because I don't think that Michigan Tech is just going to be some overwhelming favorite here. And Northern Michigan plays a style that we have seen this year. They have gotten pretty good at running the veer the way they have, where you can't just go. I mean, it's not a normal week for preparation by any means. And I think that this is one of those games where I wouldn't be shocked if Northern Michigan takes them to the limit in this one, maybe even wins it. But Michigan Tech's got, they just come off a very physical contest with Ferris, and all of a sudden they got to go ahead and kind of reestablish themselves. Speaking of reestablishing themselves, so Tony, I was just kind of walking through a little bit of how I would not be shocked, given the fact that Northern Michigan's feeling real good about themselves.
Yep.
And the fact that Michigan Tech is coming off a physical game with Ferris State.
Yep.
I wouldn't be shocked if Northern Michigan were to pull off this upset, despite the fact that the records would say I'm nuts.
Correct. And I heard most of what you were saying, and it parrots a lot of the things that we talked about, earlier in the show, as well as in the green room earlier, that, hey, again, the week after you play Ferris, you're usually beat up. You're kind of physically, just a little bit out of it. And again, this is a Northern team that has not beaten Tech. I can't remember the last time. It was sometime back in the teens. It's been a while. But this is also probably the most competitive that we've seen Northern look in a while. So, they're going to feel like they can get something done here. And let's face it, if they're able to play any kind of solid defense in the pass game and make Alex Bueno throw a little bit more, that could play to their advantage as well. I mean, obviously, again, they got burned pretty good in the pass game against Roosevelt this past weekend, but based on what we've seen kind of since GLIAC play started, I don't know that I would classify what Tech wants to do in the pass game to be as consistent and prolific as what Roosevelt's trying to do. Like I say, before he went down, Zach Zella was throwing it pretty well around the place too. So, this game is actually, I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to pull the trigger on the upset. Because let's face it, at 1-6 for Northern to win, it would still be an upset. But man, I'm far more excited about the prospect of this being a really competitive game that maybe runs into the fourth quarter than I have been in a lot of years.
Well, and you know what? Here's why I'm going to pause with some of the upset alert thinking.
Yeah.
Is when I was watching Tech play against Ferris, I thought they were doing a nice job of defending the run.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of times where I say that about teams who play Ferris.
Yep.
Where they look good playing against. I thought they did a nice job of defending the run. If they're able to go ahead and continue and play that way, Northern Michigan's going to have a real long day offensively.
Sure.
I've got a feeling, though, and it sounds crazy, I'm going to go ahead and take Northern Michigan in an upset here. And you know what? If Michigan Tech wins, they're supposed to win. They're 5-2 here, guys.
Yeah.
But I've got to. I'm curious to see if this one pans on out. But I know I'm going against the grain.
You are, and that's okay. And I'm going to stick with Tech in this one. You nailed it in that Tech did a nice job against a lot of what Ferris was trying to do in the run game, particularly early. And while no one's going to confuse Ferris State and Northern, the two offenses, there are some of the principles that are used that Ferris employs that aren't completely, they're not a drastic deviation from what Northern's doing. So if Tech's already proven that they can at least be proficient against that bodes well for them in this game, and it could be a little bit more of an uphill climb for Northern. And let's face it, I mean, top to bottom on that defense, Tech's got more guys than Roosevelt does. So, I mean, they should be able to do a better job of defending it. Well, that said, again, it's going to be up to Tech's offense then to execute when they got the shots, especially if they get any short fields and whatever else. Because just 2 weeks ago we saw Northern get turned over a whole bunch against Grand Valley. And so, they have been prone to giving up short fields at different points, especially when they're up against somebody who seems to be well prepared and able to kind of slow down what it is that they want to do.
Yeah, if Tech's able to stop the run game from Northern Michigan, and then they're able to get their passing game going, you can wave goodbye to my upset idea, because it will be about 20 points away from being the case. But Joe mentions this, and Joe, I appreciate you tuning in and kind of chiming in here. I think that this is a fair take, and looking at the fact that certainly Michigan Tech's the favorite here. There's no doubt about it. But it would be nice to see if we can have a contest where a team that's measurably different in the standings can punch up like this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how that'll go. But that moves us on ahead to a game that everyone might be tuning in to hear us talk about. I don't know. But, and the Anchor Bone game here, this is one where I think coming on in of the last handful of contests that we've played, maybe even since COVID, this is probably the most clear-cut favorite that we've had with Ferris and Grand Valley here, which is a bit of a scary thing. And this is, I think, why Justin on our Sunday evening show, Inside D2 Football, he went with Grand Valley because of the fact that it feels like they don't have the same kind of weight on their shoulders as Ferris State does coming into this. And, they can still go ahead and do a lot of good things offensively, and defensively, this is still a good, strong Grand Valley defense. So, Tony, I'll let you go ahead and offer some of your initial thoughts, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, and I think we have to start with kind of where I was Sunday night, which is, hey, I'm a big fan of Greg Cosell, who works for NFL Films, and he reviews tape constantly, and he gives you his insights. I see and listen to him on Colin Cowherd every Thursday at 1:00. That's one of my favorite segments of the week, and if I can avoid meetings for that 15 minutes, I try to, just because I want to get smarter for a little bit, and I love that stuff. But hey, he's reviewing tape, and he's even used the phrase, "You are what you put on tape." And if you look at what these two teams have put on tape so far this year, it's hard to argue that Ferris has been far more impressive, particularly on a week in and week out basis.
Oh yeah.
Now, with that said, I think Grand Valley defensively is going to be one of the more stern, if not the sternest test that Ferris has seen thus far this year. And that's, saying something, considering that they saw Pitt State. But I think you and I would both agree that Pitt State's defense today is far superior to the one that was playing back in week 0.
Agreed. They've come along.
And then in addition to that, Pitt State doesn't see what Ferris does guaranteed at least once a year, whereas Grand Valley and that staff defensively see Ferris so often that they are much better prepared or at least attuned to what is going to be expected of them to actually try and slow down what Ferris does. So I think this is going to be an interesting challenge for Ferris, just in the fact that, okay, they've seen maybe a couple of decent defenses. This might be the best one that they've seen thus far. Are they going to get slowed down? I guess we'll see on Saturday. But it is going to be neat to see that, just because, Wyatt Bowers in his first handful of games starting, I don't even think he's thrown an interception yet this year. I think he's like 15 up and nothing down in terms of passing touchdowns versus picks. So not to say he's gonna throw one here, but again, he might see a little bit sterner test in some of that regard. But at the end of the day, I still think this comes down to what's Grand Valley going to do offensively. You're looking at 355 a game offensively for Grand Valley. That's just not what. When Grand Valley is super competitive, that number is usually 455.
Right.
So, to see them struggling to move the football, they had a really low total against Pitt State. They had another sub 300 game this past week against Saginaw. And I don't think their number, despite winning rather comfortably against Davenport, I don't remember the number being super big in that game either. And so, they're going to have to find some way to establish some kind of a run game. I don't know if that ends up being more quarterback driven. Do they use the short passing game as a replacement or an extension of it? I don't know what they're going to do, but they got to put up a number bigger than that if they think that they're going to go up to Big Rapids and get a win.
There's been times where I think Grand Valley has done a nice job of throwing the ball down the field. And I think that they've got a quarterback who has great touch. I think for them to be in this football game late, they're going to need to make some big plays down the field there and win on some of those plays. They're averaging 4.0 yards per carry rushing the football. That doesn't feel like Grand Valley to me. And conversely, Ferris is averaging 7.1 a carry. Ferris is a lot more complete offensively. I don't think they're a lot more complete defensively. I think both of these teams are very good defensively. I think the biggest difference is really the ability for Ferris' offense to be able to strike the way that they are, and they can be really dynamic.
Sure.
But
to your point, Grand Valley's going to have to match that, right? They're going to have to be able to get some big plays of their own. And they're going to have to find the way, even though they were +2 in the turnover margin this past Saturday, they got to get that again. I just think you can't. If Grand Valley's going to have a shot to win, they got to win the turnover battle. They got to get some extra possessions, and they're going to have to try and see if they can get some of those fields to be shorter as well. If the turnover margin ends up being even or negative in terms of Grand Valley, I just don't see how they end up putting enough offense together to be able to win this one. So, but that's why they play the games. We'll see what happens on Saturday, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out regardless.
Tony, I saw some commentary about Grand Valley with the 3 quarterback situation and some of that they've been doing. Do you think that serves them well against a Ferris, or do you think maybe having Schuster in there, maybe more in this contest and less of some of that where they're trying to run wide and so forth? Because I think Ferris just defends the run so well that I almost feel it would be advantageous to let Schuster be in there for the brunt of the game and not feel like they need to try and do the +1 run game. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I historically I've always been if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. So to apply that axiom to a third quarterback is a little bit more than what my pea brain can handle. So I don't necessarily try to think too far into that. I think, again, I'm not a coach, but if I'm looking at having 3 guys that I think all can make plays and they're all really good, and I want to find a way to get them on the field, okay, I understand that approach to it.
Right.
But at the same time, is there a consistency or a rhythm or just an expectation level of what the offense is going to do with everybody around them that gets disrupted by changing that? Again, that's a team to team thing. And I don't know. And to say again, the old adage, again, of if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. I just think in today's football, I don't know how accurate that is anymore.
Yeah, I would
Especially in the
agree with that.
college game. So, the idea that I know exactly what's going to be best for Grand Valley's offense in terms of mixing up the quarterbacks, I'm sitting here doing this as a hobby and not getting paid to coach football. So you could take what that's worth as far as my opinion is. But I tend to lean towards where you are with this. I think you might see a couple of quarterbacks in this game just to mix things up, but something tells me if Grand Valley's going to have a real shot to win, it's probably going to be because Andrew Schuster has a big day.
Right.
Just based on what we've seen at different points where, if Ferris is shown to be prone to have a spot where maybe you can get him, it's been a couple quarterbacks who put up some big numbers on him.
If this this Grand Valley team were to have success in the +1 run game, this very Grand Valley team, I'd be shocked in the run game against Ferris. I don't see it. I'm not going to say they're a waste of plays. I think you still need to do things to keep people honest, but I would rather, if I'm Grand Valley, see Schuster on the field as much as possible. You can still run the football. It doesn't have to be a +1 type of scenario.
Yeah.
But just my take from 10,000 feet. But and some people have been asking a little bit. I've on the socials about kind of how these teams looked in the recent past. And we're going to go ahead and kind of pull up a graphic that kind of talks about, since COVID, what have these teams looked like in this game? Because, these teams between the actual Anchor Bone Classic, which is the regular season contest, and the playoffs, these teams have seen each other, 7 times?
Yeah.
We're not in love with the playoff format the way it is, but we can adjudicate that on another day. But, Tony, I think those who are kind of newer to the show, newer to seeing what these teams are all about, might be a little bit surprised that the best team since COVID in Division II, Ferris State, is 4-3 against Grand Valley. This hasn't been some dominant series by any means.
Yeah, and it was prior to COVID. The stretch since Tony and East got to Ferris State, which I think was 2012. If you go 12 through 19, Grand Valley, I think, had only snagged 2 victories in that stretch, something along those lines, and maybe 10 or 11 tries. Now, prior to that, these two teams had never seen each other in the playoffs. And Grand Valley had won, I think, 11 or 12 regular season contests in a row. So there has been a bit of an ebb and flow to it, but I think that's part of what the illustration is here. Is since COVID, it's been relatively even. So, and I think one of the commenters mentioned too that in Scott Wooster's tenure that it's he's 2-1, both those wins coming in that 23 season. So. I think there seems to be a feel that Ferris has had the better of it, and it's hard not to when you just look at how things have gone, the back end of last year and in through this year, right, where Grand Valley's offense maybe just hasn't gotten on track the way that you would expect it to, and you really need to be able to move the football in a game like this. So it sure feels one-sided, I guess, coming into this one, but historically, especially over the last several years, it's been pretty even up.
Well, for what it's worth, when I go to watch this game on Saturday, I'm not expecting a blowout. I'm expecting that these two teams are going to fight like rivals, and I think Grand Valley is going to get up for this game. We'll find out how good this Grand Valley team is by the time we've seen 4 quarters of football.
Yeah,
you and I have both picked Ferris State the other night just because of the fact that I think right now we would take Ferris State against a whole heck of a lot of FCS teams that, outside of maybe ones that are in the Dakotas and maybe in the Montana. But right, other than that, just about everybody else. That speaks to how good this run is that Ferris has been on and how good this team is. Now, as we go ahead, I do want to mention Tanner Draper, our guy here. He's mentioning here Grand Valley upset. Now, as a plug, in about roughly 1 hour, our guys on the RMAX show will be coming on doing the same thing. They won't be breaking down this game. At least I don't think they will.
No,
So
but you should
they're
tune in
trying
anyway because it's a good show.
It is, and
Yep.
our guys are doing a real good job running with that. I do want to mention, kind of moving past our thoughts on the game, we have a neat situation that's going to be occurring there that I wanted to go ahead and kind of break down. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Our friends over at D1R, which these guys are trying to cover small college football, meaning anything that's not Division One. So we got D2, we got NEI, we got D3. They are going to be parking it there from 10 a.m. on after that, Tony. Tony, you may have to stop on over and say hey. And
I have to.
Yeah, Kobe and crew, they will be going ahead and setting on up. So as Ferris mentioned here, bring any of your signs, anything else that you need right there. Go ahead and stop on over. This is kind of they're doing their own version of a small college game day, and I give them a lot of credit for what they're doing with that. These guys are this is something that's a lot of work for them to do that production. These guys, Kobe lives up, he's up in northern Michigan, guys. So this isn't exactly something that's just, 20 miles away from him. This is a big deal for them.
Yeah.
So come on out, support it. Say, hey, you know what? We watched the guys on the GLIAC Weekly. They told us to stop on over. So this is a fun thing for them and also for any school that they go ahead and are showing up at. So we want to go ahead and kind of give them kudos for doing that and continuing to kind of advance small college football coverage the way they are. So let's go ahead and kind of wrap up, Tony, with our top 25, where things are at here. And then we'll go ahead and give a 30-second talk about kind of what's coming up after this. But right now, Tony, as we take a look, we have the bookends of the top 25 here. We've got Ferris at 1. Grand Valley just hung on into the top 25 here. I think you could probably make a case for or against them being in the top 25 right now. And if they beat Ferris, they're going to get themselves moved up further in that conversation. And if they don't stick around, that'll be their third loss. And when you have 3 losses, you're not in the top 25. So
not typically, no.
So that's what we have in terms of teams from the GLIAC in here. People may be wondering, when do we start talking about playoff stuff? And we've got the regional rankings, the alphabetical regional rankings, that come out on Monday. So they will be listed in order. If you're looking at the regional rankings on Monday when they come out later in the afternoon, don't get bent out of shape when you see Ferris like the 4th or 5th name down, because of the fact that they're in a situation where this is all alphabetical.
Yeah,
so keep that in mind before
they're going to be behind Ashland and Augustana most likely. So
yeah, so don't show your backside by going on socials.
Unless my Tiffin pick comes through.
There you go.
Rolling the dice.
Now when it comes out Monday is a snapshot of what teams at that moment in time have the best resume to this point. Now you're going to be looking at a bunch of different factors and so forth. Tony, if we were going to go ahead and just kind of off the cuff, I think that what you're probably seeing is you're going to see a Ferris. And right now, somebody's going to have to step up as kind of that next team in the GLIAC to kind of be another team to make the postseason, because you've got Michigan Tech, you've got Grand Valley, who are all kind of hanging on right now. Maybe they're in that conversation in that alphabetical listing. Maybe they aren't. We know Ferris will be.
Yeah.
And Tony, I think you're going to have Indy is very much in that conversation in the GLVC. You may even see like an Upper Iowa. They haven't played Indy yet. So they only have the one setback. You're going to see teams like we have here at 8, 10 and 11 from the Northern Sun. You're going to see Mankato, Augie, and Duluth. They're all going to be on there. I would virtually guarantee it. And then from the GMAC, you're going to see Findlay absolutely. They're unbeaten. You're going to see, Ashland. That's going to be on there. They've got one setback, and that's to Indy. And then I wouldn't be shocked, Tony, if you saw somebody like a Northwood.
At this point, yeah, because I think they've only got, I can't remember, they've only got one or two losses. One loss to Ashland, right? So,
yeah,
and you mentioned both Tech and Grand Valley. If you're going to talk about 2-loss teams, Saginaw Valley's got to be in that conversation, and they probably have the best win of those 3 teams. So, there's just as much a chance of them being in that conversation as the other 2. In fact, maybe even more so, I could argue.
Yeah. So
because that third loss was against an FCS opponent, so their D2 record is 4-2.
There you have it. So this is us just kind of throwing stuff against the wall. We'll see what sticks. I just got a message, by the way, from Kobe from D1R, and he mentioned, by the way, they're going to have some guy on the show, Jason Vanderland. Have you heard of him before?
I know who Jason Vanderlaan is, sure.
So
I stand next to him on the sidelines at Rockford High School several nights a fall while he's running the offense for the high school that our kids go to or went to. So,
well, what's funny, he's originally from Frankfort, Illinois.
He is.
And I lived in Frankfort for many years in the South Burbs of Chicago. So I didn't know him back then, but it's kind of a funny deal now. But no, and you know what?
We covered him a little bit back in the day. Back in my first stint. Back when we used to write every week, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But back in the day when everything was the message boards and everything else. And
that's right.
Feel free to go still visit those. Those haven't left anybody. But well, Tony, everyone go ahead and enjoy the games this weekend. Then after that, go ahead and take a look and see what gets unveiled. On Sunday night, we'll still, of course, be breaking down the action. And then on Monday, get a chance to see the alphabetical rankings. And just remember, they're alphabetical. So don't go ahead and feel like you got to go on socials, lose your mind about what the order is. So, well, Tony, I don't have anything more. Do you have anything more for the folks?
Other than the oi that you didn't put in this time for the alphabetical for that commentary, I'll add that here. So, yes. But yeah, other than that, yes, it's been a good show. A lot to talk about. Glad the teams put some interesting results together for us this past weekend, and hopefully we get a run back of some of that here this Saturday as well.
Well, join us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And Tony, have yourself a great weekend, and we will see you on Sunday, and we'll see everybody back here next Wednesday.